Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. Thank you so much for tuning in to join us again today. We are very honored to be joined by the Honorable Michelle Reagan, and she is our Arizona Secretary of State. Thank you so much for joining us today, Secretary Reagan.
It's wonderful to be back.
Yes, it's great to have you. Last time you had some wonderful information to share with our viewers, and they very much enjoyed it. And so we're so happy you've taken time out of your schedule from the Capitol to be here again today.
Well, thank you.
And so for people who may not have seen it before and maybe have heard your name or have seen it on a ballot and don't know anything about you, just tell us a little bit about your history and kind of what brought you here today.
Moved to Arizona over 25 years ago, and former small business owner. My family and I owned a business in downtown Phoenix for many years. Love small business, love entrepreneurship. That was actually the reason why I ran for office in the first place. About 15 years ago, I spent 8 years in the House of Representatives, 4 years in the Senate, picked up a very big passion, obviously, for small business law, economic law, and then also election law. And so what is the Secretary of State's office? It's all about elections and business. When you're a business, one of the first places you go is to the Secretary of State's office. And of course, there's a large election component to that office as well. So I wanted to be Secretary of State for Arizona really bad. It's a great position. I think it's one of the best jobs in state government, and just working my heart out every day. Even the worst days as Secretary of State, I absolutely am so happy that I'm there. So
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time from that. I know you've been doing a great job in making a lot of movement and a lot of change and a lot of good change, a lot of transparency, which is wonderful.
A lot of transparency, a lot of upgrading to that office. It was a little behind the times. I think the first time I was on the show, I was telling you the office didn't even accept credit cards when I got there. So that's, we've come a long way. We've come a long way. We've got a lot of new programs coming out, computer programs, tech programs. You know, we're out when we're registering young people, especially to vote, talking to them on paper and handing them a clipboard with a paper voter registration form. That stuff doesn't cut it anymore.
And that's actually something that a lot of people probably don't know. If you join your Facebook page, you'll see that there's that Secretary Reagan's out a lot with a team of people at our ASU, at different campuses.
You're just up at NAU yesterday.
Wow, and just registering young people. You go there yourself and do it.
Sometimes I'm able to go there myself. Yesterday I was able to be there for part of the time, but we have a whole new division under my administration called Voting Rights Ambassadors, and they're just dynamic individuals. If I could have 100 of them, I would. Of course, I can't afford 100 of them, but they're a bipartisan team, Republicans and Democrats. I'm really happy that they fluent in Spanish, get right out there and work in the community, especially with young people. And they're not just registering people to vote. What they're doing is they're explaining people about their rights as voters. That is so important because, you know, you and I, we toss around words like PEVL. Well, what is that? Permanent Early Voting List. You know, you go and you explain to people.
They've never heard of that
before.
They've
never heard of that, of course. And so these are folks that are on the ground, working in communities, explaining to people what their rights are as voters. And we think it's making a really big difference.
That is, because education, as we know, regardless of what subject it is in life, is always the most important thing.
Exactly.
So that is absolutely wonderful.
A bunch of great feedback from these folks.
That's great. And I'm sure to some of the college campuses, to have the second highest elected official in the state there signing them up to vote, it probably is a bit of an impact on them, I'm sure. You're what? Well, hopefully they know what the Secretary of State's role is, but if they do, I'm sure.
Sometimes they don't, but that's okay too. You know,
and that's why you're there, right?
We're there to tell them. So
that's wonderful.
And, you know, and sometimes they have questions, which is great. You know, what do you do? What is the Secretary of State? You know, we're one of only 3 states that doesn't have a lieutenant governor, and I you know, fulfill that role in Arizona as well. So a lot of people don't know that. That's fine. That's what going out and meeting people and talking to them is all about. So I absolutely love the role of Secretary of State. I'm telling you, it's the greatest job in Arizona.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us. And speaking about elections, because actually our first topic for you at home, we're going to be speaking about Arizona elections. This is something that has been on the tip of tongues of people not only in Arizona, but all over the country. We just had a presidential
and not in a
preference
good
election.
way, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, and I know that's probably been a lot on your plate, and there's probably had a lot to do with your office being one of the forefront and one of the leaders here in our election process. We are right now facing a potential, we are facing a lawsuit as a state. Why did that happen, and what is the possible repercussions that could come from that?
Well, we're facing a couple of lawsuits. One is from a gentleman who filed a citizen lawsuit, which is his right, and that was to overturn the results of the election. And then that was just heard yesterday, in fact. And then another one is a lawsuit from the Democrat National Committee, the DNC, and I believe the plaintiffs in that are also Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And that alleges something different. That alleges, was there possible suppression of votes? Was it malicious? Was it intentional to the long lines in an effort to, was it purposeful?
Yes.
And so that's a whole different lawsuit. And so, it's just, the bottom line for me and for other election officials around the state was, you work so hard to register voters and to get them excited about going and voting. And what I want to see as Secretary of State is I want to see voter participation increase. And you want to see record-breaking numbers of participation up over 10% from the year before, or those are the kind of numbers you'd like to post.
Yes.
And so what was so, I think, heartbreaking was to see people have a bad voting experience. That was just devastating.
Well, yeah, and that was not the intention behind it. It just happened because wasn't it also a much higher voter turnout than was expected?
In some counties.
It was.
Absolutely. They had higher voter turnout, which was wonderful. They had more people participate than they did in 2008, which is the best barometer year to use because it was the last competitive presidential primary presidential preference election. So that was just, it was an awful day for voters. It was devastating to watch, devastating to see. The calls coming into our office were just, the people were mad. Who can blame them?
Yeah.
I mean, we had, we were sending people out to supplement the
wait times.
Well, anything that we could try to do,
Yeah.
but by then it was too late, and it was just.
So then many people may ask, why did you not call a revote then as Secretary of State?
Well, we looked up and we follow the law, and the law is pretty clear that the Secretary of State has no authority to call for a revote. The way a revote happens is a citizen or a campaign can ask for a revote, and you ask a federal judge for a revote. And the way the process plays out is you have to, the election has to be what's called certified. So there's a thing called a canvass, which is the counting of all the votes, and that canvass needs to be certified by the Secretary of State. And after that certification happens, any voting citizen or campaign has 5 days to go to a federal judge and make their case. So that's what we're seeing play out right now. And, it's the process at work. So we're seeing 2 lawsuits in play asking for different things. So.
And as you said, we did see a higher turnout in some counties for voting. So as the Secretary of State's office, what was done? What did you do to get people out, to encourage them to go out and vote in this presidential election?
Well,
Or presidential preference, sorry.
Yes, well, thank you for saying the right thing, which is a presidential preference election.
Yes.
It's got that long name.
It does.
One of the things I like to point out is we do have 15 counties. And although we are here in Maricopa County, the largest county, we still have 14 other counties in the state, and for the most part, they performed wonderfully. And most of those elections went off without any glitches. And we did see voter turnout increase in some of those counties, which is phenomenal. Those are the kind of results we want to see. And a lot of that's due to the hard work of those county recorders in each of those counties. And so, we work hand in hand with the county recorders all throughout the year, registering voters, certifying their equipment, making sure that they have the the newest and latest software. And so they just did a great job.
That's wonderful.
In 14 counties. Unfortunately, the biggest one, there were large mistakes made.
Yeah, but that's very interesting, I think, for even the public to hear, is that you don't have the authority to call for a recount because, there's lots of things that get thrown around by media and by words.
Yeah, I had a lot of people, believe me, I would say maybe upwards to 1,000 contact me and say, how dare you just demand a recount? And so I tried to contact as many of them back personally as I could and say, this is the process, and this is why the process is the way it is.
Yes.
You have rights. The public has rights. And
some people are trying to take that right, and so we'll see what the
and some people have stepped forward and are going through the process exactly the way the law says, and that's what it's there for. So.
Yes, and speaking of the process, a lot of Arizonans are upset because independents can't vote in the presidential preference election. You said that you'd like to eliminate it and put it back in control of the parties. Why do you think this is a good idea, and what is your opposition to this?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what exactly the Secretary of State's office proposed long ago, before the election, actually. And our philosophy is very, very simple. And it is the legislature and the public needs to decide before 2020, before the next one rolls around, what do we want this primary to look like? And what do we want it to be? Is it a presidential preference election, or is it a primary? Because it is completely confusing to voters. We go around for 4 years and say to the independents, we want you to vote, we want you to vote, we want you to vote in all primaries, and primaries are open to independents. And then once every 4 years we say, oh, except this one. It's not really a primary, by the way. It's this hybrid, and you can't vote in it. But as taxpayers, you're going to pay for it. It costs $10 million for the state to put this PPE, presidential preference election, on.
Okay, wow.
1/3 of our state's voters are registered as independents, but they can't participate in it.
Wow.
So how fair is that? So what the bill says that I introduced at the legislature, and what my philosophy is, I think is very fair and very sound. If taxpayers are going to be forced to pay $10 million for an election, all voters should be eligible to participate.
Absolutely, yes. And
if we are going to say that the parties are going to close these, then the parties need to start paying for it. It's, to me, I can't find a conservative argument why we're sticking it to the taxpayers and then saying, but 1/3 of you can't vote.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right logically.
And so some people are saying, oh, that Secretary of State wants to give it back to the parties. Well, that's
essentially
not
already
technically
theirs,
what I'm,
because they're eliminating people,
correct.
But we're paying for it.
It technically is theirs, and they're sticking taxpayers with the bill. So they're right now having the best of both worlds. And I'm saying that's not fair. You decide. You can't have the best of both worlds.
Yes, no, and that makes perfect sense, and it's something that seems as though it would be more beneficial to the taxpayers unless we were to open it up to all people.
So decide which way we want to go.
Which one do you want?
But this have your cake and eat it too is not fair, and it is confusing and not good for voters.
And one of the things, our Arizona Presidential Preference, PPE, I'm just going to say that, oh my Lord, that's a tongue twister.
That's why we say PPE.
Yes, PPE. But so if you know, wondering what that means, is March 22nd. It's later than a lot of other states. Do our delegates count the same as other states do?
They do. It's earlier than other states as well. So, sometimes Arizona doesn't matter. I think this year we saw that Arizona does matter.
Mm-hmm.
And just like New York usually doesn't matter, but look, New York is mattering in the election, and California, which is in May, certainly hardly ever matters in this election, but it's going to matter this year.
Yes.
So we're actually earlier in the process than a lot of other states, and later than some of the states. We're kind of right about in the middle.
Yes. Oh, there's so many things that we could continue to speak about that. But one thing, I just wanted to take 1 or 2 minutes before we exit this segment that you have done since you've been Secretary of State, and you began Arizona.vote. And this is something that I think it's really important to show our viewers just for a moment, so they're kind of familiar with this. This is a great public service for anyone that's watching, and so that way they kind of see what this is all about.
It's a lot easier than the old website.
It is. And so for anyone at home that's watching, you would just go to www.arizona.vote. And this is the website that you're going to see that Secretary Reagan has put together. And so here, Secretary Reagan, we have, I'm assuming this front page changes with different elections that are coming up and different things that are coming. Okay.
And rather than going to the regular Secretary of State website, which you can still go to, which has a lot of different options, whether it's business services, elections, libraries, all the things under the Secretary of State's office. This one is uniquely devoted to just elections. So it's just our state name, .vote. Very easy to remember.
It's very easy to remember.
And then also available in Spanish is Arizona.voto.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
So if you go to .voto, it should go into a translator program.
Arizona.voto.
Correct.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, then it goes in through Google Translation, and there, oh, wonderful. Votando en esta elección. Wonderful. So this is for all of our Spanish speakers here in the States.
And it has all of the business services and all of everything that, so if somebody was trying to start a new business, have a trademark, trade name, and we were the one of the first statewide offices to do this.
To do that. That is wonderful. That's adding transparency and accessibility then for all voters. And we have just about a minute here, but I just wanted to show, if you go up into the right-hand corner, you can find your polling place and look at it before that election, because every election is different, correct, where your polling place may be.
Now, these polling places, the county is going to be releasing more in Maricopa County.
Wonderful.
So, there's going to be 116 total.
Here we have get notifications. I'm assuming that's upcoming elections and things of that nature.
Right, so you can sign up with your email address to have notifications sent to you.
Okay, wonderful. And then you can register.
Or you can also sign up with, I believe, your cell phone number to get text notifications.
Okay, wonderful.
And this is something that hasn't gotten a lot of publicity.
Okay.
But it would sure be wonderful if people
would see this and then use it.
Exactly, because I would
there.
love to get text notifications, kind of like you do, from Amazon.com when your packages arrive.
Exactly. And then you can register here, and it brings you to the Service Arizona website in English or in Spanish. You can vote from home, so I'm assuming that's the permanent.
If you wanted to sign up for.
Which I do, so I didn't wait in the line, so I understand.
I know.
I did. And then the elections calendar, I think this is the most important here, so that way everyone knows.
And about 80% of in most elections, about 80%, it seems, are voting from home.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this first segment, Secretary Reagan.
Thank you.
For all of you at home, I hope that this
Arizona.vote.
Yes, Arizona.vote go. That is a wonderful public service for you at home to make sure that you're utilizing that. And we look forward to seeing you here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Dear Mom, dear Dad, dear Mom and Dad, thanks for doing fun stuff with me.
You let me play football and I have lots of friends.
I have a lot of toys to play with. I like having a home and bed to sleep on.
I feel safe and I don't have to worry about going away.
You always have my back. You make me happy.
Thank you.
I love you, Mom and Dad.
Thank you.
You made our lives better. Thank you for adopting me.
Welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you just happen to be joining us today, we are joined by the Honorable Michelle Reagan, and she is our Arizona Secretary of State. Thank you so much for staying with us, Secretary Reagan. We're speaking about Arizona elections, some great resources, Arizona.vote, or for our Spanish viewers, Arizona.voto, and that way you can go on there and access any information you need as a voter and know your rights and where to go. So that is a wonderful resource that your office has put together. And in this second segment, we were going to speak about campaign finance project and transparency. The Secretary of State's office has been building a new campaign finance system.
We have. It's pretty nifty.
Is it? Tell us a little bit about it and what prompted you to do this.
Well, you know, we know that the public is demanding more information about who's giving money to who, and especially during the campaigns, there's so much money coming into Arizona politics and politics across the country. So it should be really easy to just look up. If you wanted to look me up and see who's giving me money in my campaigns, it should be easy for you to do that. All of that is public record, and most people don't realize that. But it's really hard to find.
Yeah.
So the state law says that I have to report everybody who contributes money to my campaign. And the state law also says that political action committees, when you hear that word PAC, people hear the word PAC and they think that's dark money. It's not dark because PACs have to report every nickel in and every nickel out, but it's really hard to find that information.
Yes.
So for the past probably 8 or 9 months, we've been building this massive program that's going to be the first of its kind in the country. So Arizona will actually be a leader in transparency, where you're going to be able to go on a website. It's called See the Money, and go on this website. Very clean and easy. You just click, and a window's going to pop open, and everybody who's contributed to a candidate will be listed with the dollar amounts.
So let's say John Doe was running and you wanted to see who
Pick
contributed
me.
to them.
Go ahead and click on me, and a window will pop open.
Okay.
Everyone who's contributed to me with the dollar amounts will be listed. And you might see Matt Roberts, or just pick a name. Go ahead and click on that person, and another window will pop open, and everyone that person's contributed to will be listed. So you can just keep clicking and just keep seeing and just keep seeing the money, where, you know, the money in Arizona politics. You can do the same thing then with political action committees, the same thing with independent expenditure groups. You know, when you hear those words, IE,
Yeah.
and a lot of people think those are dark and evil and awful and scary. You know, those, for the most part, those report. There are groups that don't report their contributors because they fall under federal guidelines. And if you come across one of those, we're going to be pulling their IRS 990s because those are public record as well. So this is an amazing project that we're so excited about. We haven't released it yet. We're putting the finishing touches on it. And this will be added to over the next several years. So this is just the first phase. The second phase will be adding on the ability to look up lobbyist reports online.
Oh my goodness.
All of that is on paper right now.
Wow.
That is all paper filed. So it's public record.
People can go down to their county recorder, the recorder's office, and find that, but it takes a lot
The
of time.
Secretary of
Or the
State's
Secretary
office.
of State's office.
So
Okay.
again, it's all public, but in 2017, we'll be adding on the ability for lobbyists to just file online, which they're going to love because they don't like having to come down and file on paper. And the public's going to like it because they'll be able to look up and see everything online. So this is a huge project, a wonderful project, and again, something that no other state in the country has, and it's called seethemoney.com.
That's nice and simple and easy to remember.
And we haven't released it yet, so if you go to seethemoney.com,
There's nothing
it's not
there
up yet. But when we do release it, we want everybody to know about it, everybody to start logging on, and you know, people have been saying they want more transparency. We're giving it to them.
And it's not only going to be state elected officials, but it's also going to benefit some cities and towns.
We have a number of cities and towns that are ready to opt in and start sending their candidates through our portal as well. So as soon as it gets going, we'll be adding, you know, any city or town that wants to opt in. We're ready for them. So we're really thrilled.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned the word dark money, and I think that sometimes, like we talked about earlier, when people don't know, education sometimes opens up people's eyes to something. And maybe whenever someone doesn't know what something is, they just, out of fear, they'll name it something bad. But anything that truly, there is really organizations and people that do give money behind, closed doors and scenes. Is this something that will bring some transparency to that?
Yeah, it'll, people will still have the ability to contribute anonymously because that is their right under federal guidelines. What this does is anything that is public information already, it compiles it into one database. So the public is going to be able to see all in one place what the laws say is information that they're supposed to have. So when I became Secretary of State, I was amazed at the amount of information government already collects on people.
Yes.
What the Secretary of State's office does right now is a horrible job of laying it out for people to see. I think when they see the amount that government already collects on people, they're going to be completely shocked.
Wonderful. Well, Secretary Reagan, it's great to hear you're taking all that information and finally making it accessible to the people that could benefit from it.
It's going to be really, really a wonderful project.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come here and share with us and our viewing audience some of this wonderful information. And thank you, always at home, for watching. Please make sure to go to Arizona.vote. As a resident here in Arizona, it's your right to know what your voting rights are. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you here next time on Joy in Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and is made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town coming to your home every week. Write to Joy in Our Town, Post Office Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.